Meet Adolf Hitler, the notorious leader of the Nazis, whose name is synonymous with evil. In 1937, he made a move that would shock the car world. This is the unsettling story behind the well-known car company, Volkswagen. Hitler grew up in Linz, Austria. After his father, a customs officer, retired, Hitler had a tough time in high school and eventually quit. He didn't want to end up in a government job like his dad. With dreams of being an artist, he tried to get into the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna, but was rejected after his father died in 1903 and his mother in 1908. He moved to Vienna and made a little money painting pictures of buildings and landscapes. It was during this time that he started to get interested in politics and formed the ideas that would later become part of the Nazi Party's beliefs. Later on, Hitler moved to Munich in Germany. When World War I broke out, he managed to join the Bavarian army. He fought bravely and was awarded twice for his courage, honors he kept close to him for the rest of his life. This was the beginning of a path that would make him unforgettable. By the end of 1921, Hitler was leading the growing Nazi Party. He played on people's unhappiness with the current government and the tough conditions of the Versailles Treaty after World War I. Many former soldiers who were upset with how things were going in Munich joined him. When he ran for president, he got 36.8% of the votes, competing against the war hero, Paul von Hindenburg. Eventually, due to a mix of political tricks and the inaction of his opponents, Hitler grabbed control of Germany, even though the Nazis never won more than 37% of the national vote. By 1933, Hitler was in charge as chancellor, and his party took over. Now with political power, Hitler had a new dream to start a car company. Back then, German car makers were all about luxury cars, which meant only a few Germans could afford one. Hitler ordered a new project to start right away, and that's how Volkswagen began. The German government, under Hitler's rule, set up a state-owned car company, first called Gesellschaft zur Vorbereitung des Deutschen Volkswagens GmbH. Later, it was renamed Volkswagenwerk, which means the People's Car Company. The company was in Wolfsburg, Germany, and was run by the German Labor Front, which was connected to the Nazis. Hitler had big plans. He wanted to make a car that was both cheap and reliable, something that could be sold for less than 1,000 Reichsmarks, about $140 back then. He didn't stop there. He also wanted to build a huge network of highways across Germany for these cars to drive on. From its controversial beginnings to its status as a car-making powerhouse, Volkswagen's story is full of twists. If Hitler had a glimpse of the future, he might have scrapped the idea of Volkswagen before it even started. He asked Ferdinand Porsche, a well-known car designer, to sketch out a car for the masses. At a big Nazi rally, Hitler announced that this car was for everyone, aiming to fulfill their dreams of driving. He wanted it to be a car that people could buy by saving a little each month. The car had to fit 2 adults and 3 children, be able to hit 100 kilometers per hour, and cost just 990 Reichsmarks, which is like paying for a small motorcycle today. But as the KDF wagon, the first model, hit the Berlin Motor Show in 1939, World War II began, and production came to a halt. Only a few were made before the war started. Porsche then shifted to making military vehicles. The Volkswagen Kübelwagen was one of these, used by the German army. After the war, the Allies focused on Volkswagen to help rebuild Germany's car industry despite its dark past. The Beetle's unique shape and small size didn't catch on in the US right away. But how did Volkswagen survive? Even during the war, they kept making cars for Nazi officials. The factory was meant for civilian cars and struggled with manpower. They turned to forced labor to keep things running. Volkswagen was one of the first to use forced labor from Soviet prisoners. They also used German workers, prisoners of war, and forced laborers from Eastern Europe. They built a prison camp right at the factory and relied heavily on forced workers. A Volkswagen engineer even picked out metal workers from a group of Hungarian Jews at Auschwitz. The company's ties with Nazi camps grew when their factory became a sub-camp. They had concentration camps and forced labor camps on site. by May 1944, thousands of forced laborers, many from Eastern Europe, worked in harsh conditions. Volkswagen used over 15,000 concentration camp prisoners for labor. They even had a camp for skilled prisoners near their plant. The treatment of Eastern workers' children was particularly cruel. Pregnant forced laborers were usually sent home, but as the war dragged on, this changed. German officials opened nurseries supposedly to care for the workers' children, but these were just to get mothers back to work quickly without their babies. The children's well-being was ignored. Many died from neglect, mistreatment, and lack of care. In 1943, Volkswagen's leaders set up a facility inside the barracks of what they called the Eastern Camp. Dr. Hans Korbel, who ran Volkswagen's medical services, was in charge of the maternity ward at the children's home. Tragically, many children were moved to a facility in Ruhine, where not one survived. It's believed that 365 children, born to female workers from the East at Volkswagen, died there. Dr. Korbel faced justice for his role in this tragedy. In 1947, the British executed him for his criminal neglect in the deaths of these children. As the Allies closed in, some prisoners were taken away by the retreating German staff from the Volkswagen site. Those who were left managed to escape and even took revenge on the town that had been part of their suffering. Then, a British Army officer, Major Ivan Hurst, stepped in to take charge of the Volkswagen factory after the war. He freed around 7,700 forced laborers who had been making military vehicles at Volkswagen. The factory had been heavily damaged by bombings, ending the production of the Kubelwagen military cars, of which 66,285 had been made during the war. This marked the end of a dark chapter for Volkswagen and the start of its journey to becoming a leading car manufacturer for the masses. When the Allies reached the damaged plant, they found 50 Kubelwagens that had never been delivered to the German army. The British then put the factory back to work, this time making the Volkswagen Type 1 Beetle, the true people's car to help rebuild Germany. Over time, Volkswagen became the top car importer in the country, echoing the impact of the Model T, which had revolutionized transportation and society by making cars affordable for everyone. 12 years on, the Volkswagen Beetle surpassed the Model T's production record. By 1960, the German government privatized Volkswagen, selling 60% of its shares to the public. Volkswagen's story is complex. Despite its origins in Hitler's vision, which was more about funding war than lifting Germans out of poverty, the company survived and thrived. Today, Volkswagen is at the forefront of electric vehicle production, a far cry from its past, powering the world in a whole new way.